All right. Welcome, guys and gals, to the Gentle Art of Crushing It show. This is where we focus on sharing all there is to know on how to create success in our lives. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams while having a blast in the process. I am joined here today by Sara Jean Banks. So really an honor to have you here today. And Sara is, she's crushing it, but she's also a really good friend of mine of 20 years now, Sara? 2 decades? Has it really been 2 decades?
I try not to keep track anymore, Marta.
Oh my gosh, we're getting old. All right, well, let's dive into it. So as way of introduction, Sara is the executive director and founder of the New Teacher Collective, an inclusive online community built for teachers in their first 5 years to get support and development on their terms. Sara Jean is a master teacher who has won several awards, including Denver Public Schools 2015 Teacher of the Year, and is an expert in project-based learning and new teacher support and development. She has over a decade of experience in the classroom working with K through 12 students and has been working with students with diversity of needs and backgrounds for over 15 years throughout the country. So really just crushing it, Sara. And I am so proud of you for accomplishing what you've accomplished so far. So tell the audience a little bit about how you got to where you are today, because just want to kind of get from the start to where you are today. Just want to kind of understand that process and journey.
Yeah, no, that makes, I'm happy to do that. I probably, like many people, had no idea what I wanted to do, or at least I thought maybe I knew what I wanted to do early on. And then I didn't do any of those things. So it has not been a linear journey, as most people, I would say, is probably true of their lives. I started off going to school for science, and dreaming that I would be like frolicking in the mountains in the fields studying wolves, was really like my dream. And my life, though, always pushed me towards children, working with students, children. And I really liked it. I think kids are hilarious and they're funny and they keep things real and they teach you a lot about yourself and make sure that you don't take life too serious. And so when I graduated, I ended up taking an environmental science educator position in the middle of nowhere, Texas, which is a whole story in and of itself. And realized very early on, I loved the science piece of it. And I still loved working with the kids, and the teachers would come to this environmental science camp with their students, and they would say, "You should be a teacher. You're so good at this." And I would always be like, "Yeah, no." I always knew early on that I didn't want to be a teacher. And so tried lots of different things. I was working in advocacy, legislative advocacy in Hawaii, for another stint of my life, working on tobacco and drug control. And that was really fun, working with kids, empowering them. And then ended up back in Colorado, where I'd gone to school and was at a career fair and came across the Denver teacher residency. And they're like, "You have a really interesting resume. You should apply. We think you'd be really good as a science teacher." And I was like, no. I don't actually want to be a teacher. I never have. It sounds terrible, awful, for all the reasons that many of us know. Low pay, long hours, and just having to put up with kids all day. But it was one of those things where and you're going to see a pattern here. I couldn't sleep at night. I would wake up tossing and turning, thinking about this dang Denver teacher residency application. And finally, my husband was just like, "Just apply, because clearly you can't stop thinking about it." And I was like, "You're right." So applied, thinking I want to get in. It was a competitive program, but ended up getting in and being really excited, and started off my career in education and have never looked back since. I worked as a high school science teacher in a school where people were not lining up to teach our kids. And it was really heartbreaking, because I had done field experiences at other schools where they would have 300 applicants for a chemistry teacher, and we couldn't even find a single applicant to teach our kids. And very early on, I realized how incredibly important it was to have good teachers, our students, how hard it was to find them and how much support they needed to be able to do this really hard work. And so just started doing lots of different things, started working with new teachers, supporting them, coaching them, worked as curriculum and instruction, trying to show teachers how to engage students in a really authentic, fun way. Started working on designing teacher preparation programs and all that. And at this time, I had earned my master's. And, but, in the end, I think it was one of those things where the bureaucracy of really large school districts is really restrictive. And at some point, and we can get into this, it dawned on me that I needed to do something on my own. So I still work in education. I work with teachers, but I also have my business that I do. And it was one of the best decisions I made. And again, it was one of those things where when I came up with this idea in the middle of the night, woke up in January, I remember the month, woke up one January night, 2 a.m, and was like, oh my gosh, I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what the idea is. And then just hit the ground running and never looked back. So. That's
awesome. I love that story. And I think I want to dig into what your company is and, the mindset pieces around what drives you every day. I know one thing in our previous conversations that I always notice that stands out about your stories is how emotionally connected you are to your idea, to your company, to what you're doing. And I have to believe that is a secret ingredient to why you're so successful. So can you talk a little bit about the pieces that contribute to getting you to where you are, and then to getting to your next step in your vision? What are those secret ingredients of mindset that contribute to that success?
Yeah, I think that you're right, Marta. It is part of the secret sauce. I think it's interesting to hear that when I first started venturing off on my own, I started a consulting business. It was really boring and did not light my flame at all, but I did it. I liked it that I had a little bit of freedom. When I came up with this idea around the New Teacher Collective, which is an online community that supports teachers with 5 years or less of experience. And it is a community, a professional community, and teachers don't really receive this. A lot of other professions have professional communities of practice, and teaching is not one of those. You're really dependent on your school and your district to tell you who's going to be your mentor, who's going to be your coach, what professional development you're going to receive. I remember speaking to my husband one time. He's like, sometimes I get professional development. And I was like, we get professional development every day. And it's always, you're going to do this, you're going to complete this, you're going to get this course done, you're going to attend this. And it is never on our terms. So the New Teacher Collective spins that and says, we deserve a professional community. It gets to be on our terms. You get to pick and choose what is best for your career. And you're trusted with that autonomy to understand and know what is best for you. And now you have this community, no matter where you go or what school you teach at, you don't have to say goodbye to it. It follows you wherever you are. So this idea came to me, one January night during the pandemic, when I realized we can do this online and we can bring teachers who are even in the far off corners of rural areas together. And, I think what I had alluded to before was that I feel really passionate about this work because it's desperately needed. I will forever be an educator at heart, and our kids need really good teachers, and they need those teachers to stay. But I'll tell you, teachers are getting toppled, as many of us know from news stories, at every level of, we want you to fix these problems. We're going to give you less resources, less money and support to do it. And it just feels like teachers are the scapegoat of so many of society's ills, challenges, all of those things. And so it's just really hard work. And that is one of the secret sauce. I truly believe that when you wake up excited and you believe very deeply in what you do, that it will give you the energy to keep going, because it is really difficult to start your own business and keep going, the motivation wanes, even for me, with someone who feels very, very deeply about what I'm doing and knows it's the right path and I love it and I'm excited about it. The motivation still wanes. So I can't imagine what it feels like if you're just doing something to do it. I would say like that is first and foremost, believe very deeply in your vision and your mission of what you're doing. I think another big piece to my secret sauce was finding my why, which was outside of professional. I meant like my personal why. So even though I love education, I feel very deeply about it. There was something that had to be lit in me on a personal level for me to put this much effort and time and sacrifice into. And I will say, I always tell this story of like when we all started having babies, and you were one of them, Marta. We started having babies, and I'll never forget when you came to visit, and I was like, hadn't told you I was pregnant, and then you came to visit me, and you're like, I'm pregnant too, and we just both like cried, like pregnant women do
at the same time.
Yeah. And my husband noticed, after a year or two, he's like, it's really hard to ignore that there's just something that has been lit in all of your friends who are starting to have babies. Like something is going on with you all. And I was like, it makes sense that motherhood lights a fire in you. I don't know whether it was I gave birth and realized I was a badass and felt like I could do anything in the world. Or if it was something where I realized as a mother, I needed to have more control of our future and make sure that my child was raised the way that I wanted him to be raised.
Yeah.
And it's probably some combination of both.
Yeah.
And that became like my why was I all of a sudden, and I can't pinpoint it, I just craved freedom. I craved autonomy. And I knew that there was nothing in the world that was going to stop me from getting those two things. So like, get out of my way.
Yeah.
Here I come. Nothing's stopping me now. And motherhood really became my why. And I'm not one of those moms who is like, I love motherhood. It's the greatest thing in the world. I love my son deeply and motherhood has been amazing. But it's interesting and it's funny to hear me say my why is motherhood because I'm not someone who centers my identity around it.
Yeah.
So like that happened. And then in combination with like those two things, like there was this third secret sauce that came and, it's easy to say like, I want freedom, autonomy, get the hell out of my way. And then you come against this hurdle of money that feels really risky and scary, I think, to most business owners. I will say, I don't know if it's possible for everyone, but like, remember, I'm like living off a public school teacher salary at this point in my life.
Right.
And several years before this had happened, and I think the stars every day that this is the case, my husband had found this FIRE movement where it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And we just started saving. We know like I didn't have control over my income at that point, and I wasn't ready to give up teaching. But what we did have control over was how much we spent and how much we saved. And so we just made it a point to say like, we're not going to deprive ourselves of things that bring us joy, but we're going to look real hard and intentional about the things we spend money on. And if they don't bring us joy, if they aren't something that are really centered with our values, then we're not spending money on those things anymore. And so our savings rate went up, and I got to a place where around this time where I like woke up with this January idea, had just become a badass mother, and was just like, we have a pot of what we call FU money sitting in, in investments that allows us to say like, nothing's going to get in our way. And it just allowed this path to open for me to really pursue a business. And
I
it was
love
exciting.
that. I love that. That's so great. You hit on a couple of points that, and I know I recommended the Jason Drees book to you. I think you have it and going through it now, but one of the things he talks about is, being aligned with your goals and the outcome that you want. And I see that 100% in what you're doing is like, you're passionate, you have that burning desire to do what you're doing. And that's why you're so successful. And you're right, the motivation weans. And if you don't have that desire, you could easily fall off the tracks and just quit, right? So it's so important to be so aligned with your goals. Yeah, and then finding your why, for sure. That's huge. That's part of that passion that like fuels you to do what you do every day. That's awesome. And the other thing is like the process of life. So you didn't know, you knew you wanted to do something else, and then an idea hit you, and then you guys started saving on the side, and it was just like the pieces kind of all came together one day, right? And then you were like, okay, now is the time. But like it had like been a seed that was planted, and then over time grew and grew and grew, and then you kind of got your cues from sort of the events that kept cropping up.
Yeah, it felt like the stars aligned. And I say all that to say, I don't think that you need to have money in the bank to start your business. But if you start to get real smart about those pieces, it alleviates a lot of stress and risk.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Awesome. So we talked a little bit about mindset and the connection to your vision and your passion. Let's pivot a little bit here because I want the audience to get a sense of like 1 to 2 concrete things that you did to launch your business and sort of the principles that you followed every step of the way.
Yeah, I will go back to that. The motivation ebbs and flows for sure. And life also happens, right? In the world of COVID, my gosh, you just never know anymore. You never know. So I think that when I look back, we had a really successful launch and have had a lot of people eager to partner with us. And when I think about like what set us up for success, it was, the first was having a plan. I came up with that idea in January, and I literally spent the next couple months learning as much as I could about business and also sitting down with a business plan. So I created a business plan, and every idea that came to mind, every thought, every vision that I had, I started to throw it down on paper. And then I organized it to create a comprehensive business plan. And I will say, I took courses, like classes, other entrepreneurs, met other education entrepreneurs too along the way that helped in this early part of the business. And we learned something very quickly early on is that, businesses who don't have business plans, the majority of them fail. And the businesses who have business plans, the majority of them are successful. Going through the process, I understand why, because it gives you your roadmap that you stay true to. And also going through a business plan helps you start to think about all the things that maybe you haven't considered, especially around marketing or financials, all of those things, legal requirements, considerations that I think people sometimes don't think about. And then they find themselves in a crisis situation where they're like, oh, legal. Didn't think about these things.
Right.
So the business plan was huge. And I think that it allowed me, I will say this, the business plan allowed me to stay true to my roadmap, and it helps me bring other people onto it. So I would say like the second thing that was really, really, really important for me was surrounding myself with the right people. I've heard in the business world that, the 5 people that you surround yourself with are your biggest influencers. And I agree with that. And it's not just in the business world. I got really lucky, and I have a husband who is extremely supportive of what I do and will stop the world to try to make that happen. Give me the time, let me work on weekends as we juggle a son and full-time jobs. And so, he's part of my circle of influence, and it mattered a lot that like on a personal level, I had him. And then I found people in education who were way better than me at what they did, and surrounded myself with them. And that was part of the secret sauce here was just making sure I was surrounded by people who were really focused, kept me grounded and centered, were really good at what they did, came up with really awesome ideas. and who just motivated me to keep pushing forward, believed in me, even when the motivation started to wane. So that was a huge thing. And then I think about, there's this thing that I think that everyone should think about, is this balance between perfection and just throwing something out there. And there's a balance between those two things. But I think I am a perfectionist. I have tendencies. Sometimes I try to pretend I'm a closet perfectionist here, but I'm a perfectionist through and through. I'm a recovering one. And I know perfectionism gets in the way of business success. You will never have the most perfect plan, the most perfect service, the most perfect product, the most perfect launch. But if you wait for perfection, you're just going to be in this standstill, this holding pattern forever. So one of the secrets, what's that?
I want to pause there, right?
Yeah.
A second and ask, like, how do you overcome that hurdle of perfectionism and just do something? Like, do you get a gut feeling around, like, okay, this seems like the right thing to do, I'm just going to do it and then see where it falls? Or how, like, what's your thought process?
No, because my gut feeling as a closet perfectionist, Marta, is that none of this is going to be good enough. So no, there's no gut feeling. I will tell you, here are my strategies for overcoming it. The first was, you set a launch date and then you stick with it. So like, you tell yourself, we're going to launch this product or this service on this date, and then you stick with it. And then you backwards plan from that. And so, sometimes it was saying, I'm going to sit down and create content for social media. And when I look at my calendar, this is all the time that I have. So it's 2 hours and that's what I got. And it's not going to be the best thing ever, but it's going to be something that I put out into the world, and it will have value. It just won't be the most beautiful, most color coordinated, most everything. Right. So setting the launch date and telling yourself, like, this is when we have the time to do these things, and this is when it needs to be done by, helps motivate you to keep moving forward. And I think the other piece was keeping it simple. The perfectionist in me wanted to achieve all my things in my business plan on day one, by tomorrow, actually by yesterday. And so, like, I really had to say, these are all really great visions of things that products, services, all those, but like, whoa, back it up. Ask yourself, where is the starting point? What is the highest leverage item that you can launch? Is it a service? Is it a product? What is it that, and focus on that and only that. And, the really impatient person in me wants to have a beautiful podcast, a beautiful website, the whole range of services, my products ready to go that first year. And that is just not, it's just not feasible. So like, keep moving forward, focus on one thing, set the launch date, and just move towards it, and don't let yourself stop. That's what I had to do.
I love that. I can definitely relate to that. And that is such good advice, just to put a stake in the ground, commit, and then just go with whatever you can produce and get to the finish line by that date. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, lots of really good nuggets there. I'm kind of curious, as we start to wrap up, like, what's next for you and the company? What are you thinking?
Well, that's fun because, right, like this past year we were focused on, a virtual summit where we had, hundreds of new educators from across the country come, and we set that launch date. And it was really fun, super successful. And, I think something that I have learned that's really important, and it's something I learned as a teacher, but sometimes it doesn't always translate to the business world, but I have to remember it, is listen to your customers. Like in my case, it was always students, right? They will give you the feedback. They will tell you what it is that they need and that they want. And now that we have, a really long email list, and we have a following, and we have, hundreds of teachers from across the country, we have this audience that is going to tell us what it is that they want and they need. So we've heard loud and clear through like this past year, I think that this is really weird, but you give the people what they want. They really love to hear me and my team talk through teaching. One of their favorite things about our last service was like the four of us in a room talking about teaching as a revolutionary act. And they want more of that. So this next year, we have decided to launch a podcast. I don't know that, I think it was always part of the plan, but we didn't know that it would be the next big thing that we did. So we are going to launch a podcast this next year with the four of us. And I think the other big piece is we have several universities and school districts that are interested in partnering with us. And I think that will open up a diversity of revenue streams. So we're looking to finalize a partnership and just start some exciting stuff with, a big client too. So
cool. Very nice. Awesome. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing maybe one action that you'd recommend our audience start doing immediately to improve their mindset and get to success.
I always go back to the why. If you aren't clear on your why, then you have to start there. There is just so much when you are starting a business. There are so many challenges. There's so much life that's going to get in the way. There are so many ebbs and flows, so much waning with motivation. And you won't get through those if you aren't really clear on the mission and vision of what you're doing and why it means so much to you. Like, why do you want this business personally? What does it do for you? What is the value add that it provides you or your family or your life? And I think that that's what I would say is if you aren't clear on those things, you need to get really, really, really clear on them and start there. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing and have a plan. Don't wing it. Don't wing it.
Start with a business plan. That's always good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And how can the audience support you and New Teacher Collective?
Education's it's a biggie, y'all. So even if you're not in education, we need teachers. But more importantly, teachers need you. We really desperately need support. It feels like it gets harder every year, and it's showing when we look at teacher enrollment and preparation programs. It's down dramatically. Our K-12 public school system is growing with sheer numbers of students, and we have more teachers leaving education than they ever have. So we're coming to a place where it's going to become everyone's problem because we won't find teachers to fill classrooms. And a key to this is supporting our teachers. So I think, what we would love is if you know a teacher, if you feel passionate about education, speak up for teachers. But in terms of the New Teacher Collective, you can come visit us at newteachercollective.org, see what we're all about. And if you know a teacher or love a teacher, send them our way because they deserve support. They really need the support, and we all need community more than ever.
Awesome. So good parting words. And last but not least, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm always up for a good network and connecting with people. So would love to hear your stories. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me. My email is sarajeanbanks@gmail.com.
Awesome. Wonderful. Sara, it was really great having you on, and believe it or not, I learned so much more about you just having this conversation. So that I did not know before. So thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Marta.
All right. Signing off.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. I know I sure learned a lot. I hope you did as well. I want to take a second, just thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that I only ask you for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Bye.